Welcome to the HDFS Careers Podcast, the podcast featuring informal conversations with family science majors about their professional journeys. My name is Erica Jordan. Typically, I focus on interviews with HDFS alumni, and I will pick that back up again for the next episode. Today, though, I will be sharing something a little different. For this episode, I've interviewed Matt Warzel about tips for job searching during COVID-19. Matt and I connected on LinkedIn. He is the president of MJW Careers, and he has a background in business administration and marketing. As is true for all interviewees on this podcast, Matt's views are his own as a private citizen and do not reflect the views of any current, former, or future employers. Without further ado, here is his interview. Well, welcome to the podcast, Matt.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
I'm glad you're here too. And thanks for being so generous with your time and reaching out to share tips. Can you tell me a little bit about your background and what you do?
Yes, absolutely. So I am the president and kind of the operator, day-to-day operator of MJW Careers. I'm a resume writer full-time and a career coach, kind of interview training specialist. And essentially, I'm just trying to get people more interview opportunities, better interview opportunities, and faster. So what's the end goal is essentially just making people, happy about the actual job that they're going to be taking and excited versus kind of settling in at somewhere. During this time of pandemic, it's very, I think, helpful to get, to give some advice to people so they can get an idea of what to expect if they're starting to embark on a job hunt or maybe considering a career change.
Yeah, I love what you said too about helping people to be excited about the opportunities, rather than to feel like, they're just kind of doing something. I mean, I love that you have that mission that is part of your personal mission.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I mean, it's important because, if anybody's in a transition, especially, why settle if there might be something that, you just kind of feel like you have a calling towards. It's like, well, start building the blocks correctly to get to that new role and really make the efforts to learn and eventually become an expert in that industry or in that space. So now more than ever, it's a good time for transition if you're in that situation.
Oh, awesome. Okay. So can you tell us, speaking of these transitions, what I can imagine, I can't even imagine what it must be like for people who are in some sort of career transition during this challenging time with the pandemic and so many other things happening. I know that a lot of people are in that boat. So either whether they're graduating and so they're looking for a job for the first time, or they're in the midst of a career change, or they've been laid off. Just what tips do you have for people to seek out opportunities during such a unique and challenging time?
That's great. Essentially, everyone should be playing the job hunting game, we'll say, quote unquote, the right way. So essentially, you got to do the applications online. I know a lot of people, not a lot, but maybe there's a split there that say, oh, don't worry about it. No, you should be mindful of, if you want to work at a Google, you need to go to their careers portal and at least set up a profile and get your resume into there, because their internal recruiters can then source you for future jobs that you may qualify for. So it's important to first be in the, we'll say, internal recruitment world of these different companies you admire. Next, definitely continue to source through Indeed and LinkedIn's and other websites that might be listing availabilities, because again, if you can get in there early enough, there's somebody on the other side that will see it, at least if it gets through the ATS, so, and the ATS is that applicant tracking system and kind of a screener. We can get into that in a minute, but essentially, so you might even get some eyeballs on it. So it's important to play that kind of game. And then thinking outside the box, this is what I really like, is there are so many neat things people are doing these days that I'm kind of learning as I go through my knowledge acquisition of how I can help my clients better. And some of the things I'm seeing are just really neat. Like there's one that, so authoring thought content and sharing it with targeted decision makers, right? So if you go to this company that you like, we'll just keep saying Google, and even though it's huge, you might not even find anybody in Google, but maybe a more logical mid-sized company. But no, like if you go into these companies you like on a LinkedIn and you network with these people, connect with them, create an article that's targeted, that relates, or a video that shows off maybe a particular skill, but again, relates specifically to that company, or maybe a role within that company, or, something that can kind of get them to understand it's almost about them and helping them, and send it to that contact and ask for feedback on how you can improve your skill in relation to that targeted role. And then afterwards, send a thank you note. So if you do this a few times or a handful of times or maybe once a week or what have you, these are little seeds you plant that can get you at a right role, not just the next role, but the right one, where you want to work and who you want to be working with and what department. So then if there is an opening there, they might remember this person that's coming to them with some nice little unique information presented, in almost a unique way too. So another thing I like is if you get into the social media kind of stalking idea, and I don't mean it in a negative way. I mean, literally you go on these companies' websites or social media sites, excuse me, like the Glassdoors, LinkedIn's, Facebooks, Instagrams, Twitters, and leverage some of the information they're posting to prepare for interviews, and not only that, open up dialogue that you can have during the interview about some of the stuff that's happening with them. And honestly, and that's kind of the long game if you start doing this stuff. But the short term, what you can do is you start liking things and sharing things. Someone on the other side's paying attention because, somebody out there is writing this stuff and reading. And so eventually you can maybe direct message or tweet at them and say something like, hey, I'm a big fan and wanted to see if there's any ways I can stand out in this process. You're not necessarily asking them to send off a resume anywhere for you, but you're asking them, is there anything I can do that'll make me a viable candidate for your company and that can fit in your culture? And literally, I've seen this work firsthand through some colleagues that shared this information with me. And it's fascinating that, if you can get savvy with networking, especially using like a LinkedIn other world where a lot of these decision makers, they'll hang out at, you can really start opening doors to your, dream companies.
Yeah, I think, there are a lot of good points, a lot of gems in what you said there. First, I think not to be discouraged by these online, kind of job application systems. I think you hit the nail on the head that some people, they're discouraged. Some people are just convinced that if you don't know somebody else within the company, then, there's no shot. But that's just not the case. You never know. You never know until you try. I know that my jobs, I have not known anybody on the other side. And it did start with me having to fill out an online application. So, there are many situations in which the online application does really truly lead to a position. So not to get discouraged and to continue to research those opportunities online, while also I like your idea about developing the relationships even during this virtual world. One thing that strikes me as a nice thing is so many people are outside of the office working from home or what have you right now, that they're spending a lot of time online in many cases too. So in some ways it's might be the best time to connect and really start to reach out through social media, because so many people are spending so much time on it. And you're right, I've definitely liked organizations, liked companies before, and had someone reach out to me who's the one doing the posting on the other side. So, they're putting this content out there. They like to see that there's somebody who's paying attention and following. And you can kind of become this consistent name that keeps coming up. And then, like you said, reach out. So, I love the work that you all are doing. Is there any way in which, you could really help them to achieve their goals or stand out as an applicant? You already kind of have become a little bit of a known entity in the organization. So I think that's those are great tips.
Oh, thank you for that. Yeah. And I have a handful too. And I actually post usually about it used to be once a week. Now I'm trying to tone back a little. I'm hearing that posting every day on LinkedIn is actually a deterrent. Oh. And so, yeah, I'm continuously building my knowledge with the people that know what's going on the other end with social media stuff too. And so I used to post once a week though. But in any case, if you go to my blog, jobstickers.com, you will see I have some of these and I literally call them backdoor job hunting tips. Yeah. So you can filter them out right away. But I probably posted, I think, maybe a little bit, maybe like 10 or a little bit less than that. But I probably have a dozen more to post. So I'll continue share that information about just unique strategies to find, those ways that no one else might be doing, or at least less people are doing.
Right, right. I love that. Yes, backdoor job hunting tips. So that's like a tag within your blog that people can search for and read about your postings on that, on the blog.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Jobstickers.com. Okay. Okay, so what else when you do finally get into the interview, then what what should you be doing to stand out in this virtual environment? Now you can't go into the office in many cases or into the organization. You might be doing a Skype interview or a Zoom interview or whatever. So what do we need to know to be successful?
That's a great question too. First and foremost, and these are going to be couple of them are going to be almost apparent, but I'd rather give everybody just a catch-all. But first, your Wi-Fi connection. If you got to stand next to the router, do it.
Yeah.
If you got bad weather coming, reschedule if you can. I mean, these are really important things because you are just like I am right now with you, relying on this stability. So, practice the Wi-Fi and practice hearing your own voice and recording yourself. So almost essentially, you can even set one up with one of your friends ahead of time and be like, let's act as if we're going to do a mock interview right now and go through the whole steps you would do. So that way you're kind of fine-tuned, everything's set up, and you know how to work it right away. But those are the fundamental technical stuff. As far as some other things, first is and this is kind of a catch-all of a bunch of us career coaches, we've all kind of decided to start putting together some best practices because these things are becoming more and more, day to day, these virtual interviews.
Yeah.
And so the first and foremost, we all consensus agree is answer with confidence as if someone's standing in front of you. Just act like you are in the room. If you have to improvise a little in your head or whatever you got to do to get in that space, do it, because it's important that because you're online isn't the reason you didn't get this job that could, end up giving you tens of thousands more dollars in your livelihood and et cetera amounts of impacts. So answer with confidence as if someone's standing in front of you. Smile, which is funny, but don't be, again, that kind of goes with that idea, but smile. Keep a glass of water handy because you will get a wet mouth. And this is actually a time where, it's a little bit more acceptable, I think, with Zooms because you're not as distracting by bringing in a big old water bottle. You know what I mean? So it's like, use that to your advantage. Be able to look at the clock that's, in case you're kind of seeing where you're at in the process, you can get an idea too, but just so you know, hey, this is running, if it's going to last 25 minutes, maybe, hey, this is getting near the end, and you can maybe able to tee up some stuff if you're in between thoughts. If you are going to pause, offer cues. So if you pause in speech, you may need to provide a verbal cue such as, please allow me a moment to gather my thoughts, or please allow me to consider this question, right? So these are the things you're supposed to do anyway when you're in the room. And even that awkward silence of a few seconds, it doesn't matter. They're going to respect the fact that you want to make a well-informed answer. So just do the same as if you were in the interview room. And that is one of the things that we would say you should do anyway. So you're not just blurbing out not only an answer that you probably could have had a better one for, but it could have you might be blurbing out the same project. And now you're talking about the same project as an accomplishment on 3 different answers. It's like, no, one project per answer. Show off how much you can do.
How much you can do. And I like another thing that strikes me as that being very important to give that cue in the online environment, because otherwise they might think that the system has frozen up.
Yeah, right.
If they don't know that you're thinking, they'd say, hello, are you still there? Which could be really awkward. So yeah, no, to say, okay, let me think about that for a moment.
Exactly.
Please allow me just a few seconds to think about that. Yeah.
And remember, treat it like a regular interview. I mean, that's what it comes down to is play it as if you would. And you know what? You can even have more notes handy. I mean, you really can use this to your advantage, and not notes where you got to read through paragraphs. We're talking, you got exactly what you meant to say just based off of a quick little half a sentence bullet point. And so you've got your list of project successes or metrics you want to share that may have been new since you've gotten the interview or whatever. So yeah, it's important to really maximize this to your advantage. And if that requires cheat sheets and watches and waters around you, whatever, if it makes it a better interview.
That's a good point. And that goes back to your initial point earlier in the conversation about the research. Like, yes, use the fact that we have so much information available to us. I know that every interview I think that I have been on, especially in the past 10 years, I have basically printed off a book of information about the company or the organization or the institution. And you're right on the last for this current position. My first couple of interviews, they actually were um, virtual interviews, and I had these papers sitting out so I could remember people's names. I had, their photos out. I had, their research interests, whatever it was, their position in the organization, and also some questions that I wanted to ask so that I didn't forget. And so, yeah, you're right. You don't have to worry about having 3 million colored sheets of paper spread out all in front of you on a desk in someone else's office, because you're in this online environment. So you can definitely use that to your advantage.
I could have said it better. Exactly my mindset with that.
Yeah, I do think you definitely want to show that you're seriously interested in the company or the organization or the institution, and by doing some initial research and then going in and, to your earlier point, being able to have a conversation about what they have going on currently, that really shows that you are somebody who's genuinely interested in becoming part of the team, and that you've done your research and you know what they're about. You know what you're getting into.
Right. You use the social because they're kind of giving you the pulse right away, and then use the Google News to figure out what's going on as far as moving and shaking, and maybe even competitor or industry news. So be an expert as much as you can from the outside, and then you can even leverage that in an interview when they have, during one of your answers can be, maybe addressing their pain points as to why they might have that opening. And even if you take a shot in the dark and you're pretty confident at the answer and it's wrong, at least they know, hey, the person made an attempt. They linked that one issue we had with the merger and kind of spread it through this lineage of this kind of, direct line where this answer is now. And, it makes sense. It's logical. It's just not right. But it's like, I don't think they're going to discount you for really showing efforts to try to piece together some reasons why you're the reason they can eliminate these pain points for having the job open. And not only that, bring value and make them money. So, exactly like you said, and having this little portfolio like stuff, that stuff's so nice now with its virtual, because you can have like you said, the project successes, you can have some of these news things you might want to present. You can have some of these closing questions that you want to ask, so just stuff handy. And I actually have an article I wrote about what you should have in your interview toolbox, so to speak. So you can check that out on the blog too. But it's like, play this to your advantage. I mean, gosh, going in person, I feel like would be more nerve-wracking.
Yeah, in some ways, yeah, you don't have any. I definitely have been in interviews where I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
I wish I could remember this person's name. But if you're there, you've got it printed off. Or, I wish I could remember that project that they're working on. That long, complicated name that they have for it.
I love it.
So this is a bit going off the record, and I can totally cut this out if I need to. But do you have any specific tips for people kind of seeking out opportunities in nonprofit organizations? There might not be any difference, but I just thought I'd ask, since we have a lot of people in our field who do actually end up working in nonprofits.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. So first and foremost, you need still a professional resume. You just need it built so your messaging revolves around nonprofit expertise, and which I've done a ton of. I mean, I love my nonprofit clients. It's such a it's such a different line of work that you just got to appreciate it. Like how frontline workers and just things that are different, that really do justice for overall. So so cutting to the chase, though, you got to get a right resume together, which means, yes, it is professional. It's not supposed to be an academia CV. It's not supposed to be a federal or military type setup. I mean, this is just keep it as if you're worried about operations, right? You're managing a budget still. You're managing X amount of volunteers. You're managing X amount of donors or fundraisers or depending on what nonprofit, there's still a bottom line that needs to be addressed, right? So think of these terms. Think of the metrics or quantifiers that you're still handling, but also use words that can almost relate to that kind of nursing mentality of like compassion for passion, or excuse me, passion for compassion. I've seen that, which always rung with me, but now it's kind of getting a little dated, I think. But so there's just words like compassionate and advocacy, and things that relate to that world. Get those in as some of your soft skills, while you're also mentioning some of these neat bottom line impacts, and then still flesh in your technical stuff, whether it's MS Office Suite or some sort of fundraising management software or whatever. Just make sure you still sprinkle in that stuff, and still sprinkle in your operational skills, which whether it's volunteer coordination, nonprofit project management, nonprofit program budgeting, nonprofit program management, whatever. Use like almost like a business term, but throw nonprofit in front of it, or make it more relating to a nonprofit piece, but still has that business impact. So you're that way, it still shows that you're concerned about advancing this profit towards its goals. You're not just there to, make people feel good. You're there to make an impact, but also carry this thing through. Yeah. So there's actual funding and actual, you can still thrive in this role because, the program still can carry on. So,
right.
Yeah, think of it just like you're setting up a professional resume. Just make sure your buzzwords are more geared towards the nonprofit space. And you can find those on job descriptions directly, which is very nice. It's not a hidden thing. Recruiters use what they're given by hiring managers, and that is the job description. And then also endorsements on the LinkedIn. At the very bottom of LinkedIn, everyone has all these words, these buzzwords that you can click and autofill if you think someone's done some good work with that particular field or that particular, we'll say, buzzword. And so look at people that are in a nonprofit world that might be industry leaders or, people in your particular program that are a supervisor you want to aspire to be or whatever, and see what kind of endorsements they have under there. And you can start emulating some of those into your own world if you've done it, or at least now start the strategy of acquiring that knowledge. Philanthropy, there's all sorts of words that just stand out more in the nonprofit world that you just got to find. And I have them, available if somebody wants to reach out to me if they hear this and want to know some more of those. I have no problem sharing some typical words I see on my nonprofit clients.
Oh, thanks for that. But also, I think that's a great point that you brought up too about using the job description. Like, yeah, actually paying attention to it. And job descriptions aren't perfect, like we know that the people who are writing them, it's not perfect. And maybe they don't know exactly what they want all the time, but using the language that they speak within the job description, I think is a really smart and effective strategy. So thanks for sharing that as well. The one other, I guess, last thing, and then you can also just feel free to share anything else that's on your mind. But the last thing that came to mind is, you have any specific tips for recent graduates to keep in mind? They're graduating at a very strange time. Is there just anything that you have been offering to encourage or help them to be strategic? And then just anything else you want to share. This is now your open forum for this last few minutes.
Yeah, this is great. Actually, what I was going to end with is exactly kind of geared towards these folks, these entry levelers. So I would say my first piece of advice for the early career candidates who just graduated, and congratulations. And, and honestly, I've never felt so much for a graduating class as I have for 2020s. Literally the 2008s of the world and 09s. Yeah, it was bad, but this is something else altogether. And so first and foremost, breathe and know we're on your side, whether you're a hiring manager, recruiter, someone like me. We're on your side, and we want to help you because we understand that this is extreme circumstances, and you should have had a graduation. You should have been with your friends, and you should have had those moments and those passages in life and share them with your community. And it's just unfortunate, but we got to live too. And we got to have people not dying and keep this under control. So you made a sacrifice more than you think. And you might look back and say, well, it's just graduation. I didn't sacrifice much. You can do that all you want and be modest, but don't brush it off because, we all are so proud of you guys. And gets me emotional kind of.
Me too, actually. I'm really, it's really going to be emotional too. Yeah. They are an amazing class to go through this.
First and foremost, I think, know that we're all with you. I know that it's a daunting year for any graduate, regardless, but especially 2020. So, as someone who's involved in HR speaking, as well as speaking with HR people, as well as collaborating with recruiters and hiring managers of alike, everyone has a consensus that let's be easy on these kiddos. And I use that term just because, as you know, I just turned 40. So I think entry level is 20 years ago. Holy moly. But, everyone's going to be kind of, knowing what the situation is, seeing it on their resume and understanding, oh, this person was a graduate of the pandemic year. And I think they will be surprised to see that there will be some allowances, whether it's a gap, maybe not immediate start date after they graduated, things like that they maybe 2019 would have looked at and said, oh, well, you didn't get a job right away. What's wrong with this person? But now the empathy is going to be there. I think I really do feel that way. And I think that there will be, moreover, some additional opportunities that might just be for folks that have, whether it was affected by the COVID or our early career graduates, there might be some training opportunities out there that may have not existed prior to COVID. So who knows how they're going to get creative in terms of trying to hire this new workforce. But I know that for lack of better terms, these kiddos, just keep your heads down, do what you can and what you can control, because in the long run, there's no one going to be sitting there at the finish line waiting with your medal saying, you graduated, here you go, here's your life. Like, life's hard, life sucks, life gets mucky, and life gets tricky. And personally, professionally, spiritually, every which way. So do what you can to control you and your world. That means taking care of yourself, not beating yourself up, doing the right things, whether it's exercising, reducing your, drinking habits from the old days, from college, maybe revisiting God if you maybe lost your way during college. I know college is a way to explore, and I went through it. And you kind of battle yourself and learn and grow and praise yourself, beat yourself up all over the place. So, don't feel bad for yourself, but also know that you can keep your head up, that this is an extreme time, and control what you can. And professionally wise, just from a career expert like myself, continue education. You just got done with the books, but maybe you should keep going and plug in this gap. Maybe you should get that master's, or maybe if you got your master's, go for the PhD, or if you got PhD, go for some more certifications, or any level you're in, go for more certifications or continuing education, training, things that kind of keep growing into a subject matter expert, into a thought leader of your industry, of your world. So if you are, let's just say an accountant, I'll go real general, if you're an accountant, go learn new tax codes, or go learn, laws, or learn things. You maybe go learn a different side of accounting to be more broad skilled or whatever. So, control what you can. And then not only that, the continuing education or training or certification kind of thing. Also start looking for experiential learning, which is hands-on, kind of in the field, almost like an internship, or helping out a friend, or maybe a friend of yours, mom's a payroll person, or a bookkeeper, or a tax accountant at home. And maybe you'll say, hey, can I work with you, on Tuesdays, just to start getting an idea of how this world works. So start doing, free work, which sucks because, we all came out of school waiting for that paycheck. But, to get a grasp on any industry, you got to kind of work at it. And so offer yourself up for free, work for free to gain insights, make connections that maybe can parlay it into a permanent role. So it's important to not stop treading and not start running. You can't just lay in the water and just wait, because the idle hands aren't going to do anything for anybody, including yourself. So get out there, be proactive, whether it's networking, getting an internship, or working for free, reading trade magazines, industry association publications, Google News alerts of the top companies in the industry and where they are in the industry, and where's the industry going, and how is it affected by COVID. Really start to hone your craft and build on your craft, so then one day you can give the advice and be the subject matter expert.
Oh, that's good advice. Yeah. I mean, and I know your background is in business, but I guess I'm thinking like Some of our listeners, they might be going into like nonprofit, they might be going into healthcare, they might be going into education, but like, yeah, still, you can transfer those same tips, kind of learning, reading about like what's happening in the field, like how are each one of those industries or the industry that you're interested in, how has it been
Yeah.
affected by COVID? Are there ways that you can get plugged in and volunteer from home, or maybe do an internship from home if they're still working remotely, or if they are going in, are there ways that you can safely engage? And even if it has to be a volunteer experience at first, like, yeah, just getting your foot in the door and starting to make those connections.
Right, right. And be mindful of the rules. Don't jump ship on proper protocols with COVID. Be mindful if it looks like a toxic environment, you're like, hey, it's the first opportunity that I get. But if it looks like they're kind of on the other end, just being careless or, so be mindful too, because we're still trying to battle this pandemic. So do what you can. And if it means, like you said, working remotely or even, going to, and for your instance, nonprofit, folks out there, this is great because there's so much opportunity to give back that, just start volunteering, because again, that all kind of plugs into that nonprofit world. So there's somebody that, maybe you do Meals on Wheels, right? And so maybe you don't want to do Meals on Wheels as your nonprofit, or that even that kind of approach that, maybe your nonprofit's, relating to homelessness, but so at least you're still going around and getting that experience of donating time and understanding how the nonprofit works. So then maybe
Yeah.
you can, after you donate your time, maybe you can pick the brain of the program manager and be like, how'd you get in this role? And what other nonprofit stuff, like just start having conversations with people in the industry. And so yeah, there's so many opportunities for people in nonprofit right now, especially because I know personally that they need volunteers right now for a lot of different things.
For sure. Well, thank you so much. This has been so helpful. I love all the different tips that you've shared. And could you tell us your website again one more time in case listeners want to poke around and read more about your tips or learn about your services?
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Yes, I can be found at jobstickers.com. It's like pot stickers, like the food, but job stickers. So JOB stickers. And that is literally my blog. If you go to jobstickers.com, it'll plug you into my website, but my blog on my website. So from there, you can find my services. But I always like to promote that because it's easier to remember than my company name.
Yeah, I love it. Pot stickers. Hey, who doesn't like some good
So
old pot stickers, job stickers?
job stick. 10 years ago, it was such a great idea on my end. I don't know if it's sticking.
Hey, I can remember it. So that's
Yeah.
helpful. Anything with food is always, anything that's
I
related
know.
to food is always nice. Well,
Oh,
thank
yeah.
you so much.
Thank you, Erica. You are awesome. I'm so excited to hear this.
Yeah, I can't wait. I hope you enjoyed this bonus episode of the HDFS Careers Podcast. If you have recommendations for HDFS or other family science alumni to interview, please reach out to me at hdfscareers.com. Don't worry if they're not working in a job that would normally be considered in the field. I'm interested in hearing a variety of stories, especially if they are working outside of academia. If you like this podcast and want other people to be able to find it, please rate it and review it in iTunes or share it on social media. Until next time, keep exploring your future possibilities.